Now, I don't want to be a party pooper and pour cold water on everything, but let me ask you, seem to have a huge amount of benefits to these, but there must be some downsides.
I think at face value, in terms of the flexibility that you get, the ability not to buy annuities, to retain the pension fund value until death and pass that on, those are all sort of real benefits. There are very, very little disadvantages of QROPS. Really, they follow UK pension rules for a reasonable period of time, which is normally about 5 years of somebody being non-resident from the UK. And to be fair, the only disadvantage really that I can think of is perhaps the charges of moving across. Now, those can be as little as nothing, as 0%, there's no charges, and they can be high as several percentages depending on the type of scheme and type of investment that the individual pension holder wants to do. Sometimes you will get transfer penalties as well from your existing provider, but that's all part of the advice process that you should go through with your advisor to see whether those transfer penalties are worthwhile incurring or whether you'd be better leaving it where it is and perhaps considering QROPS at a later stage.
Okay, and that's no doubt something that you, of course, can help the end client with.
Absolutely, that's what we do. Effectively, we're a financial advisory firm, and we go through all the aspects of each individual pension that somebody may hold and advise accordingly.
They sound almost too good to be true, and sometimes when the government allows something like this to go through, they end up moving the goalposts 2 or 3 years later. They realise they gave away too many tax advantages, and then they sort of want to change the goalposts. Do you think that might happen with these?
I think actually it's beginning to happen already. I'm afraid the financial services tends to have the ability to sort of stretch the boundaries of the spirit of the legislation. So a lot might be down to the letter of the law, but the spirit is perhaps being extended. We've already seen, for example, that QROPS in Singapore, the authorization status from the Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs has actually been removed. So they are taking a close eye on what's actually going on, and if they see anything they don't like or they feel there's an abuse of the actual system, Revenue and Customs are quite happy to turn around and stop that jurisdiction actually having the QROP status, so no further transfers of pension arrangements can go across. Most places that are perhaps a bit more local to home, the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man, there's very, very good relationships between those legislative bodies, the financial services commissions in those sort of areas, and you would see far less abuse of the system, which is a key to what's going on. But yes, HMRC is keeping a close eye on QROPS and any abuse. But if it's used within the framework of the rules that are actually there, there should be no sort of major changes in the long term.
You mentioned that certain QROP schemes have been closed down because there were problems with them, and therefore they're not taking any further entrants. What position does that leave the people in who are already in those QROP schemes, though?
Yeah, HMRC have been very good, actually, and they have turned around and said that the people who are actually already in those schemes can carry on benefiting. But where HMRC does take a look at what those individuals have actually done with those schemes, if there has been an abuse of the system, if they've taken money out of the pension, which perhaps they wouldn't have been entitled to under the UK scheme, the Revenue does have the ultimate facility to impose sanction and tax charges. And those would be a liability which would fall on the individual, which really they would have to pay, or the pension scheme would have to pay in the very near future.
Okay, well, let's not dwell on the negative issues because, of course, like anything, these are products that people need to enter into and think carefully about and, of course, choose QROPS in decent jurisdictions. Let's look at the actual product then, if we may, Gary, in a bit more detail, maybe some of the more sophisticated or detailed questions now that a listener might have. What specifically do I need in order to be eligible for a QROPS? For example, we hear something about this 5-year rule. Can you explain that?
Yes. The 5-year rule is actually vitally important. A QROPS, realistically, is only of any benefit to somebody if they have got an intention of going and living abroad or they're already abroad. Now, the 5-year rule relates to the legislation that the QROPS provider has to adhere to. And the 5-year means that you've got to be non-UK resident for a period of 5 complete tax years. So it's not normal calendar years, it's 6th of April to the 5th of April. So for some people it can actually be nearer 6 years before they've completed that time. Now the importance of that timeline is that within 5 years, the QROPS provider must report back to our Revenue and Customs about any capital or income payments that are actually made, and therefore the scheme must fall in line with what you could have done within a UK pension scheme anyway. So you can't take too much income out, you can't take extra tax-free cash or any aspects along those lines. Beyond 5 years, more flexibility arrives because the reporting requirements cease, and therefore there's more flexibility in the income somebody can actually take from the QROPS pension scheme, and more flexibility in the permitted investments as well. You then fall under the guidelines of the jurisdiction that you're in, and that might include more esoteric type investments and specialist details, but could even include residential property.
Gary, you're talking about 5 years, 5 tax years, so that's April the 6th to April the 6th, April the 5th to April the 6th, and for some people find that may morph into 6 years depending on when they start.
Yes.
But when we're talking about being classified as non-resident, that doesn't mean that people have to be outside of the UK for the whole 365 days of each year, does it?
No. The UK authorities will let you in for a few days. You're okay there. The way it works is that most European jurisdictions, if you want to be resident there, you need to spend at least 183 days in that sort of country. Now, there's also a rule within the UK which says you shouldn't really spend more than 91 days. It is a complicated affair, residency, but certainly don't spend more than 91 days in the UK. So no, it's not a sentence, as it were. You don't have to spend 365 days a year away from the UK and not see family and children and that type of thing. There is a sort of fairly relaxed approach to it, but there is a specific timescales that must be adhered to.
Protected rights. Am I able to transfer protected rights into a QROPS?
Yes, certainly. Any personal pension benefit can be transferred across to QROPS. We probably haven't got the scope here to go over all the details of protected rights, but you do potentially lose some benefits of a protected rights transfer, which would always be documented to people so they were fully aware of what they were actually doing.
And when that becomes an issue again, you're in a position to be able to help them with that?
Absolutely. Before any transfer would ever proceed, you would be aware of all the sort of details about a particular transfer and the advantages and any potential disadvantages.
Can one transfer benefits that are already in payment into a QROPS?
Yes, and I would tend to say that's where we get most inquiries from. So individuals that are in what we used to term as income drawdown, which is now regarded as unsecured pension, you can transfer that into a QROPS arrangement and then get the benefits of not being restricted to age 75 and having to convert that to an annuity at a later stage. So you effectively lose those rules and can carry on in that income drawdown arrangement for the rest of your life.
You touched upon property earlier, so let me just clarify. I can purchase residential property with my QROP fund?
Yes, I go back to this 5-year rule, and it's very important that you don't do anything within the pension scheme that is any different to a UK pension scheme until you've been non-resident for 5 complete tax years. But after that, yes, you just fall into the regime of the QROPS provider and the jurisdictions, their rules and regulations, and property purchase is one of those things that's then allowable. How you structure that is an important thing to look at. You may find it's better to be structured in a company, or may just be better to be individually held by the pension fund. But do bear in mind the property is held by the pension fund and not you as an individual. So it's still got to be seen as an investment, and perhaps rental income coming in would be ideal to increase the pension value in the future.